Today is Wednesday, September 27th, and we are only days away from what will be another remarkable achievement in the life of an extraordinary person. Georgia's favorite son, former President Jimmy Carter, will turn 99 years old on Sunday, October 1st. Welcome to this edition of Political Update. I'm Tim Darnell, joined in our Midtown Atlanta First Alert studios with political reporter Doug Reardon. And Doug, the former president's 99th birthday, which is this coming Sunday, will come roughly 7 months after the Carter Center, the organization that is truly the former president's, one of his most lasting legacies, announced that he would be going in to hospice care. Now, you traveled to Plains the weekend that this announcement came back several months ago, and you're heading to Plains again this weekend. What do you expect the atmosphere is going to be like in the former president's hometown?
Yeah, and I'll throw in one more thing, Tim, too. I actually worked at my first job in Albany, and so I had been to Plains without all the fanfare and without all the celebration going on. And it's a unique place. It really is. It's really like a Jimmy Carter theme park. His house is a national park. The high school where he went when he was in school is a national park. There's, right when you drive into town, a massive sign that proclaims it the home of Jimmy Carter, the former president of the United States. And so it really is a sleepy little town with quite a history to share. But when things happen, like you mentioned, when he announced he was going into hospice, and especially for his birthday a couple days ago, actually, was the Peanut Festival, it really bustles. It's a tourist attraction. People come to learn about the former president, to see the places, where he set foot and still does, as they still live down there in Plains. Maranatha Baptist Church, where he taught his famous Sunday schools for many, many decades, is still there, and they still do those Sunday schools. His niece, Kim Fuller, runs them now in the same fashion that he does. And so it is a really unique place, just kind of in the middle of South Georgia, that we expect will be bustling this weekend for his birthday celebrations. There were quite a few people down there for the Peanut Festival, where the Carters made a surprise visit, riding on a float. There's some images of it now, and I think it really got people excited. And of course, it was probably very nice for the former president to get out and see the people who admire him so much, to travel all the way to that little town in South Georgia of Plains. And so, we think there will be quite a few people down there. There are some planned events going on Saturday, even though his birthday is on Sunday. Unfortunately, the government shutdown that is looming could close down those sites that are so important in that town, because they are government run, they're national parks. And so there's going to be a lot going on Saturday, certainly. And then October 1st, Jimmy Carter will turn 99 years old, which obviously is quite an achievement, especially, like you said, considering that he went into hospice care 7 months ago. So we were all, of course, very concerned for his condition when he made that announcement. But throughout the months since then, his family has said that he has lived a normal life. He has been reading and spending time with family quite a bit at his home there in Plains. And so, yeah, it'll be good. I think it'll be nice to go down there and just kind of do a little check-in on him and see how he's doing for a big occasion for the former president.
The former president and Mrs. Carter, as you mentioned, made a very surprise appearance last weekend at the annual Plains Peanut Festival. This was an event that was created not only to honor Georgia's favorite son, but also the tremendously lucrative cash crop that has become synonymous with Georgia and with the former president. This is where he launched his presidential campaign. His campaign headquarters was in Plains, Georgia, and there are still many, many sites that are still standing that commemorate his legacy.
Yeah, certainly. And just to let people know, too, the Carter Center here in Atlanta is also celebrating his birthday. If people want, they can go there physically while it's still open again. Keep in mind that government shutdown could keep it shuttered for a little while after September 30th. But you can also go to their website, their Twitter page, send them your messages, your well wishes for the president and the former First Lady as well. They will be displaying them, and they'll be passing them along to the family, too. And, of course, the Carter Center is so much a big part of their legacy and what they've done. We talked to one historian a couple months ago when they had made this announcement about his hospice care, who said Jimmy Carter might be the only person who did more good outside of the White House than he did inside of it, and that is certainly true when you look at the work that the Carter Center has done in terms of so many health issues, eradicating tropical diseases, and just spreading word about good public policy in the years since it has been established.
Well, this is obviously happening on Sunday, October 1st. Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com will have all of the latest information and updates on what will be a historic weekend, and again, another remarkable achievement in the life and the legacy of the nation's 39th president. Also on October 1st, the Prosecuting Attorneys District Attorney Oversight Council will formally begin its work. It was created earlier this year in the Georgia General Assembly by Republican lawmakers, and a bill that was signed into effect shortly after the legislative session by Governor Brian Kemp. Last Friday, the Prosecuting Attorney Oversight Council was the subject of a hearing in Metro Atlanta. Our reporter Abby Kasouras covered the hearing, and here is her report, and we'll be back in just a few moments to further talk about that council.
The Prosecuting Attorneys Qualification Commission could start hearing cases as soon as next month. The commission is an 8-person panel selected by state leaders that has the power to remove district attorneys and prosecutors from office.
I believe that SB 92 is an assault on democracy.
DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston is one of 4 district attorneys from across the state opposing the bill. Their lawsuit claims the commission targets minority Democrats in a conservative state.
There are already legislators who have vowed come October 1st to file commission complaints against district attorneys here in Georgia for just doing their job, including the DA who works in this very building.
She's referring to Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, who charged former President Donald Trump with election interference and 12 additional charges. State Republicans are defending the law. Attorney General Chris Carr said, unfortunately, some district attorneys have embraced the progressive movement across the nation of refusing to enforce the law. District attorneys who choose to violate their oaths of office are not immune from accountability. The defense argued that district attorneys are bound by the Georgia Constitution to represent the state's interest.
Given that, we think the balance of the equities weighs in favor of allowing the commission to act.
It's up to Superior Court Judge Paige Whitaker to decide the constitutionality of the law and the commission. Depending on her ruling, it could give the green light to other states looking at similar legislation. In Atlanta, I'm Abby Kasouras.
That was our reporter Abby Kasouras reporting on the upcoming implementation and the official beginning of the Prosecuting Attorney Oversight Council and the hearing that was held late last week in regards to a lawsuit seeking a temporary injunction from the council, or to prevent the council from beginning its work. Now, one of the political reasons behind the creation of the Prosecuting Attorneys Oversight Council was rumored to be that of really in retaliation or in response to Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis's historic investigation and massive organized crime-related indictment that was handed down last month against former President Donald Trump and 18 of his Republican allies. Speaking of the former president, we have several developments coming up over the next several weeks. First of all, just earlier this week, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee ruled that jurors who might be chosen for any of the related trials in terms of the former president's indictment will be offered a series of protections from public identification. Judge McAfee ruled that no images or courtroom sketches or videotapes of any jurors will be allowed to be taken or publicized in anticipation of what will be a national and internationally covered criminal, organized crime, and racketeering related trial related to the former president and 18 of his allies. 2 of those allies Kenneth Cheeseborough and Sidney Powell. Their trials are set to begin in less than 4 weeks. These will be the very first of a series of historic trials. What we anticipate will be criminal trials regarding or related to Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis's indictment that the former president and other co-defendants engaged in a vast criminal organized crime related scheme to overturn the lawful results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. Now that begs the question, will Donald Trump ever see the inside of a Fulton County or Georgia courtroom? I had a fascinating conversation with an attorney in Gainesville. Shondell Summer is now a privately practicing attorney in North Georgia, in the northern Georgia city of Gainesville. But her career began not only as a Fulton County public defender, but also an assistant district attorney in Hall County. And I asked her the very pointed question, will the nation's 45th president ever see the inside of a Georgia courtroom? Here is her answer and some answers to other questions that we posed to her from Atlanta News First.
Regard to the defendants who have asked that their cases be tried quickly. In other words, they file something called a speedy trial demand. Those defendants are both lawyers. And it is interesting to me that they've asked for speedy trials, because generally when you ask for a speedy trial, it's because you think you have a really strong case and you just want to get it over with as quickly as possible. So Georgia allows for a process for that. The defenses that they have in those cases are based on work they did as attorneys, and attorneys are allowed wide latitude in the things that they can recommend to clients, the actions they can take on behalf of clients. They can't do anything illegal, but certainly novel, untested theories are encouraged at law. We wouldn't have Brown v. Board of Education if somebody at one point didn't think, boy, this might be a great idea to try and see if we can integrate school systems. So the idea that Kenneth Cheeseborough was making a recommendation to Donald Trump as to how he could challenge election results, and the idea of coming up with alternate slates of electors is really nothing new. It's not even a novel legal theory. It's something that was done in 1960 in Hawaii and was actually done in 1876 during the Rutherford Hayes administration. That was a hotly contested election, and 4 states submitted 2 slates of electors. So this is not something he came up with on his own. It was a legal theory. So I think he has a very strong case. Sidney Powell has also a surprisingly strong case if she can prove what she's trying to say. She says that she was invited to Coffee County to look at the computer records, and that she was authorized to do so by the Coffee County authorities, who have the authority to release those types of computer files to whomever they vote to do that for. They can have audits done of those computer records. And she says she was invited there, and that there is an attorney who, you know, when you read her pleadings, she doesn't say who the attorney is. She says she's waiting for the district attorney's office to provide her with evidence, which is called Brady evidence. That's a big term in criminal defense, Brady evidence, because it means evidence that will exonerate the defendant. So she says she's waiting for the district attorney's office to provide her with evidence that will exonerate her. I'm really anxious to see how this jury selection goes, because they are picking a jury in another RICO action in Fulton County involving Young Slime Life. They've been picking a jury since January. They don't even have a panel, is my understanding. So how they expect in this case, which is maybe even more complicated in terms of making sure that the jurors don't have any biases, prejudices, that they haven't formed or expressed an opinion, and basically that they've been living under a rock for the last 4 years. How they're going to find enough jurors for this case, I don't know. And they have to do it within 2 weeks, because if they don't seat the jury and by November 3rd, then the case goes out on demand. In other words, it's dismissed if they don't seat a jury and have it teed up and ready to go, swear the jury in by November 3rd. So they only have 2 weeks to pick a jury. But they're saying they're going to try the whole case. That's what the district attorney's office is saying. She's saying, we're not just going to limit the evidence to the testimony about these two people. We're going to try the entire conspiracy. So that does bring up lots of questions about, what are your opinions about Trump? What are your opinions about every other person involved in the case? So I think it's going to be interesting to watch to see if they are able to get a jury. Now, I will say the judge on the case, who I don't know, but I'm impressed with how he's handled things so far. He's had very balanced rulings with regard to complicated legal issues on grand juries and special purpose grand juries and the motions to sever. I think he's been very fair to everyone so far. And he may be able to keep this case under control and get that jury selected in 2 weeks. So the judge has ordered a process whereby the defense counsel will submit questions to the judge. And then the district attorney's office will have 3 days to respond to those questions by either objecting to them or agreeing that those questions should be asked of the grand jury. This is highly unusual that a defense counsel would ask to interview grand jurors. Grand jury deliberations are secret, but the identity of the grand jurors is not secret, and there's nothing that prohibits them from talking to defense counsel, but it's just not usually done that way. And the idea behind it, I believe, is that you had this very suspicious transaction involving the indictment. The clerk of Fulton County docketed the indictment before the grand jurors met to vote on it. So that sort of suggests that they knew what the grand jurors were going to do, because they had this, what she referred to later as a sample indictment, which was inadvertently docketed. So the defense attorneys want to find out if they just sort of went in there and summarized it and said, okay, here's what we want you to vote on. Let's vote on this conspiracy, and let's just kind of, whether they sort of ballparked it rather than reading each and every charge and having a separate vote for each and every defendant, and went through the process that's required for grand jury indictments. And of course, they return what's called a true bill if they agree that an indictment should be returned, or a no bill if not. And of course, a grand jury indictment is not evidence, and it doesn't even really mean much, because the adage in criminal defense is that a district attorney can indict a ham and cheese sandwich if they want to. It's easy to get an indictment. So in this case, what they are trying to prove is that they didn't even go through the procedures, that all they did was maybe just summarize the indictment and not necessarily read each and every averment to the grand jurors. So they want to question the grand jurors about that, and the judge is letting them do it. I think that the chances are 50-50. I mean, they've got an indictment. They can summon him to court. He can be put on trial. But they've got a lot of deconfliction to do before that happens. In other words, you've got cases all over the place. You've got duplicitous indictments, in my opinion, with the Washington, D.C. case and this Fulton County case. You have a presidential election. You have so many things that could derail this process that I think there's a possibility it won't happen. On the other hand, it appears as if they're moving full steam ahead. And I think the outcome of the Chesebro Powell case might be significant in that if they are acquitted, that could take the wind out of the district attorney's sails, versus if they're convicted, then that certainly will increase the momentum to try all of the other remaining co-defendants. But there's so many things that are left to be determined, and that is whether anyone is going to flip, whether they're going to make deals with the prosecutor to save themselves and not necessarily stick together as a coalition. Steve Sadow, who of course is heading the Trump defense in Fulton County, is a good person to have if you want to keep a cohesive group of lawyers together. I've worked on cases with him in the past, and he is very disciplined in terms of keeping the group together and pointed in the right direction. So I will be interested to see if anyone splinters off from that group. Well, Chesebro and Powell would have weak reasonings for trying to have their cases removed from Fulton County, because they were clearly not acting in a capacity as federal employees at the time. Neither of them were federal employees. They were simply attorneys in private practice who were retained by either the Trump campaign or Trump himself to do work in overturning the results of the 2020 election. So they would have very weak cases. Mark Meadows has a strong case, in my opinion, and I think that the ruling of Judge Jones was possibly in error. We'll find out what the appeals court thinks about it. I think there was what is known as a colorable federal claim, meaning a plausible claim that he was acting within the authority as a federal officer when he was taking orders from the president to do certain things. I think it is within the president's jurisdiction to make sure that the elections in the country are free and open elections. And that includes having the ability to send the FBI to investigate. The FBI is a federal branch. They report directly to the Department of Justice. So Jeffrey Clark, who was the Department of Justice official at the time, also has a plausible claim that his case should be removed to federal court. However, there is clearly evidence that he was acting outside the scope of his duties when he was basically relieved from his duties after taking actions on behalf of the Trump campaign to try and get some things done down in Georgia by suggesting that he send a letter to Georgia saying that the election was being disputed. So that's out there. The reason why you want it removed to federal court, well, they don't have cameras in the courtroom, so you can kind of go under the radar. The other reason being that the federal court picks jurors from a wider area. Fulton County is picking from Fulton County, only. And of course, Fulton County is a highly Democratic county in terms of their voting record. So this being such a political case, no one is going to want someone from the other party sitting in judgment. In federal court, you would get more of the northern counties, and the Atlanta division of the federal court has several counties outside the metropolitan area of Atlanta. And those counties typically vote Republican in large number. So that's the reason they want to draw from a larger pool. There is some suggestion that they could draw the jury from the entire Northern District. I mean, and when I say some suggestions, being an attorney, I associate with attorneys and we sit around and talk about these things. So there's some suggestion in my circles that potentially you could draw from the entire Northern District of Georgia, which would be great for this case because most of the Northern District of Georgia probably votes 80% Republican in any given election. I think the most interesting issues to look for are what these persons who were mentioned in the special purpose grand jury report who were not indicted, what role they have in this case. Some of them may be flipping. They may be witnesses for the state, and we just don't know it yet. So it will be a very long trial. They expect 4 months worth of testimony. So that suggests they have a lot of people who are going to come in and give information. Again, I doubt whether they can get this thing off the ground, because I don't think they can get the jury seated. And they very well may decide just to let Chesebro and Powell go, just to dismiss the charges against Chesebro, especially, in my opinion. That's a very weak case against him. Powell has a little more of a sinister feel to her defense. She's always been sort of, even Trump had said, she's had sort of crazy ideas or something like that. So, but she might be somebody who's ripe for picking in terms of the district attorney trying to get her to cooperate and give testimony against Trump, because she was close to the source.